Republican Congressman Keith Self of McKinney, thank you so much for joining us. So you voted against ousting Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Why was that? And what's your reaction to the fact that a Speaker has been ousted for the very first time?
Well, I voted against it because we have got to continue to pass our appropriations bills. We're already late. We're under a continuing resolution right now, and we have got to continue to fund the government. So I didn't want to get caught up in the personality cult traps that we have in Washington, D.C. We need to do our job. We need to pass the appropriations bills because we're under a CR right now, continuing resolution for what, 40 days left in it. So we're going to go through this shutdown charade again in 40 days. So we need to pass our appropriations bills. Now, the House has passed 70% of the funding for the federal government for the next year. The Senate has not taken up a single bill. And so we've got to get through the 7 remaining bills. We've got to get them over to the Senate so that we can fund this government so we don't have another CR shutdown charade here in about 40 days. That's just a couple of days before Thanksgiving. Now, that's the worst timing I can think of to have any discussion about a government shutdown.
Let me ask you, and I do want to ask you about that, but does all of this, the drama over the speakership make it seem as if Republicans can't govern?
Well, no, this is messy. It's democracy. But the real chaos is in the Biden administration. Look at our southern border. We're now over 10,000 people coming across our southern border every day now. Look at the inflation that our citizens, our families are putting up with, 20% cut in their standard of living today. The chaos is in the Biden administration. This is a short term. We're going to find a speaker, and I believe that the next speaker will have an excellent opportunity to pull the Republicans together, because there's nothing like a crisis to bring us together to say, yeah, we got to work together. We've got to get this done, even though our majority is narrow.
So there have been a number of people mentioned as, candidates for Speaker. You've got Majority Leader Steve Scalise, the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, Kevin Hern from Oklahoma, who's chair of the Republican Study Committee, Tom Emmer, the Majority Whip, and 2 members of Congress from Texas that I've seen mentioned, Roger Williams from North Texas and Chip Roy from Central Texas. So who do you like?
Well, at the Texas delegation lunch, the Republicans today, we heard from several of those. They all made very compelling cases. We've got a lot of talented people in the Republican Party. We are holding our powder dry. I'm holding my powder dry because I want to see who actually gets in. I mean, we're early in this. We're one day into this. And I want to see who gets in. I want to hear their cases. But we need a person that can bring the conference together. And again, I think it's an excellent opportunity for whoever is made speaker to do that, because we now realize we have got to stand against the Biden administration as a whole. So I'm pretty optimistic that we will put this behind us fairly soon. And again, back to those appropriation bills, we've got to fund the government. I would like to see us pass those bills in the next 40 days. The time we've got left before the next so-called shutdown, which is really only a temporary pause in non-essential services. Jack, when they talk about a shutdown, it's only 20% of the government. And frankly, we've already funded 70% of the government with our bills. I asked the Senate, take it up. Let's get it done.
I did want to ask you about Congressman Arrington mentioning that he would like to see former President Trump and presidential candidate Trump be the speaker. What's your reaction to that? Do you agree?
Well, President Trump has already said he's totally focused on his election, and that's what he's got to be doing. Look, he is the leader of this party for one reason. He fights for the American people. And that's the reason that people want to see him, because we need a fighter. We need a good conservative person in the chair but I think we've got a lot of talented people, and I hope we come to a good decision in the Speaker of the House.
Do you think the rules need to change for the next speaker so that whoever that next speaker is can't be so easily removed as Speaker McCarthy was this time?
Well, you're talking about what they call the Jeffersonian Motion. It's been in place for over 200 years in this government. So this is a very traditional, very historical motion that has served us well over the years. And I will tell you, I don't think it ought to change. I think it is what this country was started with, and I think it has served us well. I see no reason to change it.
And just to be clear, we're talking about the fact that one member of Congress can bring a vote to vacate the chair.
That's right. But remember, that's one person can bring the motion to vacate. There were more than one person that participated in this, and I think the 8 felt that that was the only way they were going to get their legitimate concerns addressed. Personally, I don't think you make deals with Democrats. I don't think that's a good governing model. But the motion to vacate is very historic, very traditional, from the founding of our nation, Thomas Jefferson.
Do you think that this effort has weakened the Republican case in the sense of, you mentioned all of the problems that you have with the Biden administration? Does all this drama distract from that?
Well, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, Jack. And I think we will. The investigations into the Biden crime family will continue. I have no doubt about that. The only thing that it's distracting from, that it's delaying, is the passing of the appropriations bills, because I would have liked to have done more this week, but we're not going to. But I will tell you also, this is what we're seeing here. This is a microcosm of a movement across this nation that we are seeing. I talk to members all the time. I talk to leaders who are out from DC around the nation, and there is a movement, I think, of frustration with the federal government. Now, you can pick your issue. It can be inflation. It can be government spending. It can be the border. It can be fear of the federal government, the 18 armored vehicles coming up, knocking in your door in the middle of the night and dragging you out half dressed. But there is a movement across America of people just frustration and anger with the federal government. And I think that movement is going to largely define how we move forward.
I wanted to ask you about your vote last week against a spending plan, along with 20 other Republicans, that conservative supporters said provided an 8% cut in domestic spending and more controls over the border than ever before. And so I'm wondering, why was that? Why did you make that vote?
Well, I am certainly all for strong border enforcement. But when you talk about the border enforcement, the border elements of that CR, there is no hope that the Biden administration, the lawless Biden administration, is ever going to execute any enforcement on the southern border. We see it today. We have the laws in place to protect our southern border. The Biden administration doesn't execute any of them, and it's the executive branch. That is their job. So I wanted a shorter period of time, because this town, I've learned, only operates under pressure. We don't do anything unless there's pressure. So the 30 days would have been too long to pressure us to continue to do our job in the appropriations bills. So CR is not a way to run a business. But there have been 130 continuing resolutions, CRs, since the last time this Congress actually passed the appropriation bills in the period of time that by law we're supposed to. 130 since then. So the CR is not a way to do business. I want to get us back to regular order where we pass appropriation bills on time. Let's just take a son or a daughter. They get homework in January and it's due in September, at the end of September. Well, they get to the middle of September and they haven't done their homework. Do you give them another month to do their homework? Do you give them another 2 months, another 45 days? That's the analogy. We need to get back to passing those bills as the law requires.
But what was your alternative, though? I mean, that was realistic.
Shorter CR. A shorter CR to force us to do our job. As I say, pressure is the only thing this town responds to. If you give too much leeway, this town just uses the time available. And by the way, Jack, we had passed 3 bills in 4 days. So we know how we can get them done if you'll just get them through committee and bring them to the floor.
As you mentioned, you've got less than 40 days now for this continuing resolution. And so I'm wondering, what do you think is going to be the key to, because you don't support the CRs, the continuing resolutions, you support passing the rest of the legislation and then getting it passed in the Senate as well. So how do you think that's going to happen given the reality that is the House right now?
Well, everyone is talking about the big bad omnibus at the end of the year, where we crunch together all the bills because the Senate or the House hasn't passed them. So they crunch them all together in one big bill. It's not defined at all. It's just one big bill. You may remember last December, Nancy Pelosi passed $1.7 trillion in an omnibus. Nobody wants that. So I think that's the next pressure. Once we get through the speaker vote, we're going to be more focused so that we don't go to an omnibus. And that is the worst case when we go to an omnibus at the end of the year. But I will tell you, the word on the street is that Ukraine, the Senate is going to ask for somewhere on the border, on the level, $100 billion for Ukraine. $100 billion. That's unfathomable. And what we ought to be all about is securing our border before we send $100 billion to Ukraine. There are some estimates they might ask for more than $100 billion, but in any case, it's unthinkable.
And my last question to you is this, and I appreciate your time, Congressman, and that is, as far as getting these bills passed, do you think that once the House, the Republicans select their speaker, do you think that pressure is going to be on that speaker? Is that going to be part of this process, at least when it comes to your vote, on making sure whoever you vote for and whoever gets this job feels the pressure to get this done?
The Texas delegation, the Republicans, at our lunch today, we heard from 3 of the candidates. Every one of the 3 said exactly that. They will be focused on getting the appropriations bills passed. So absolutely, I think everybody understands we've got to get her done.
And who are those 3, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm not going to name them. I will just tell you they were all very accomplished leaders, and we were very glad to hear from them.
Congressman Keith Self, Republican of McKinney, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jack.